In this video, we're going to talk about the box model from a high level and all of the related elements and components such as absolute, relative, stacks, auto layout, and much more, which are going to help you create websites in Framer. Now, this is specifically addressed from a theory point of view. We also have other videos where we're going in detail with examples, but it's absolutely fundamental to understand the core principles even before you apply them in your real life projects. So without further ado, let's get started with the very first one, which is going to be an integral part of your website builds whenever you need something which isn't the classic stack layout, and that is going to be the absolute positioning. Now, what the absolute positioning is going to allow you to do is to break the rules in the sense that you can position an element outside of the boundaries that usual elements will have. So setting the position to absolute is going to give you granular control over where that element is going to be located, and as you can see here, gain precise control over element placement by setting exact coordinates, ensuring elements are exactly where you want them. So the exact coordinates is going to be the theme for the absolute positioning. Now, when to use absolute positioning and when to avoid it. The very first case of absolute position use is going to be for elements that need to stay in a fixed position regardless of the screen size. So as you know, screen size plays a major role in the distribution of the various elements in a site, and it's also going to be a good idea to use absolute position when you require exact pixel perfect placements, or even for things like overlays or modal dialogues that need to appear above other content. Think about cookie models or other type of similar interactions. Now, it's not always a good idea though to use absolute positioning, so there's going to be instances where you simply want to avoid it, such as in responsive designs where elements need to adapt to different screen sizes, especially in a responsive way. Don't say that you cannot use absolute positioning in responsive designs, but there's definitely things that you need to consider. And it's also not ideal for content that should be part of a fluid layout, or when maintaining consistent spacing and alignment across different devices when necessary. Now let's talk about another really important element, and that is going to be relative positioning. Now, relative positioning is going to be used much more often, and you can utilize relative positioning to create flexible layouts where elements adjust dynamically based on their surrounding content. So it's a very useful element whenever an elements need to move in relation to each other, or for components that should maintain relative positioning within a given container. And also, it's very useful for responsive layouts where elements should shift naturally as the screen size changes, in opposed to what we previously discussed when it comes to the absolute positioning. Now, there are going to be instances, of course, where we simply want to shy away from relative positioning, and that is, for example, when exact placement is critical. In that case, we might want to opt for absolute positioning or any other areas or options that we have at our disposal. Or even for fixed elements that should not move within the content. And even more when dealing with complex nesting that could cause unexpected behavior. Now let's talk about an element that is going to be the pillar of your Framer builds. So we moved away from the more common positioning methods. Now let's talk about a component, and that is stacks. Now, stacks are going to help you organize elements in a structured either vertical or horizontal manner, which is going to allow you for consistent spacing and alignment automatically. So as you can see, we have this element organized as a stack, and what we can do with it is either organize it in a vertical stack or horizontal stack. We're going to have all sorts of different options when it comes to the distribution and alignment of the elements within that stack. Now you can also create a stack within a stack, and that is where things get interesting, because that is going to help you get to even more advanced and nuanced visual layout options, which are going to not only help you to create these more advanced visuals, but maintain a level of consistency throughout your entire design project. Now, when to use stacks? For creating clean, organized lists or columns of content, or even more when you need consistent spacing between items, or also in layouts that benefit from automatic alignment and distribution. And of course, there's going to be instances where you don't want to have stacks, such as when elements require irregular spacing or positioning, or for layouts that need complex inter-element relationship or precise control over each element's position is necessary. So stacks are going to be used for the very most part in pretty much every single Framer site, but there's going to be those instances where you probably just want to use a single element or simply group them in other ways. Now let's talk about the grid layout. Grid layout is going to help you design complex layouts efficiently, and it's essentially going to divide the space into rows and columns for structured organization. So the beauty about grid layout is exactly that, the ability to have columns and rows that you can reorganize and adjust as you please. So this is going to be perfect for pricing components or set of cards, or showing search results in a given way. Now, the best use case scenarios for cards is again when you need structured and multi-column layouts, or when aligning content in a clean grid-based design is needed. And it's even really helpful for responsive designs that need to rearrange elements systematically. But there's going to be, of course, instances where cards or grids actually are not going to be your best bet, such as when the design calls for fluid or non-uniform layouts, or for simple layouts that don't need a grid structure at all, and when the grid complexity just outweighs the benefits in a simple design. Now let's talk about constraints. Define flexible boundaries for elements, making them adapt seamlessly to different screen sizes and orientations. Constraints are going to be your Swiss Army knife when it comes to creating these boundaries and establishing clear rules that are not only going to work in the default desktop version, but especially on mobile, they're going to be really useful. So when to use constraints for creating responsive designs that adjust to different screen sizes, and when elements need to remain within certain boundaries, and also to ensure consistent behavior across various devices. But as always, there's going to be instances where you simply want to avoid constraints, and that is when fixed positioning is required, or for simple designs where constraints just add unnecessary complexity, or even more when exact placement is simply more important than flexibility. And now, as a tribute to one of the design softwares which 99% of you are probably going to have used at any given time, is going to be Figma. And the reason why I added the auto layout from Figma is specifically because auto layout, whenever you export a Figma file to Framer, is going to be absolutely a fundamental element for you to speed up the process, because as we are going to explore in the course, Figma auto layout can be exported and it's going to be translated into stacks. Now, stacks and auto layout are essentially sharing the same core principles, and that is the reason why if you structure the auto layout effectively in Figma, when you export it to Framer, you're not going to have to do much work at all. So auto layout is definitely one of those elements that you want to keep in mind at all times when designing, and it's going to automate the creation of responsive designs by allowing elements to adjust their size and position based on the container's dimensions. So definitely keep auto layout in mind whenever you're designing Figma, and learn about stacks, learn about auto layout, and clearly understand these core principles, because they're going to be absolutely essential. So this is pretty much it when it comes to this overview in theory. And again, there's going to be much more to this, and I'm going to give you practical applications and show you exactly how these elements work, so that you're going to truly master these components.